Today we're talking about the teacher of teachers. You may have heard that phrase if you've been around our centers for any length of time. It's the one and the only Emma Curtis Hopkins. Emma Curtis is known as a mystic because she taught so many of the founders of our New Thought churches. The Fillmores with Unity, Ernest Holmes, our very own Ernest Holmes, of religious science, and the folks with divine science. As you know, Ernest Holmes is the founder of this teaching, the author of the Science of Mind that we teach from here at our Center for Spiritual Living. And it is said that he was the last student that Emma Curtis had. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it is said that that is what happened. Now, his brother Fenwick states that Emma Curtis Hopkins aided Ernest's studies as he polished and refined his own gift of mystical awareness. Emma's mystical teachings are primarily 12 lessons, and she taught these same 12 lessons all the time, over and over and over. And along with those, she taught practices of how to practice her teaching, how to practice these spiritual principles and things that we teach here as well. And these are ways that she said we were to step through that veil, again, into the mystical, stepping through the veil of this time-space reality that we live in and all the things that we're confronted with, stepping through that to deeper spiritual understanding or universal law itself. In reading through her work, I can see how Ernest gleaned from that, not only her teaching, but some of these practices. How many of you have heard me talk about daily spiritual practices once or twice, right? Yeah. And Emma does the same. She was able to fan the flames, if you will, within those individuals with her teaching, that spark within them that ignited their consciousness to be able to go out and not only live the teaching that she taught them, but to also teach it to others and to really change the face of religion in America at the turn of the century, turn of 1900s. The interesting thing about some of Emma's work, if you've ever studied any of it, she can be a little challenging to understand, right? A little challenging on that mystical side. But the good news is that you don't have to understand it all to begin to glean from it its beautiful message. And she says, just do the practice. Just do the practice. You'll get it, right? You'll get it. And I think that's true of much of our learning. Anybody remember taking math for the very first time as a little kid? We had to learn 1 + 1, right, before we could get into advanced algebra. So everything that we learn builds on itself. We learn the math and then the arithmetic and then the fractions and then the equations and all that other stuff until we get into some of the higher calculus and that sort of thing. And the same is true on our spiritual journey. We may have learned to pray, and then we learned affirmative prayer, and then we learned visioning and other practices, meditation, and then how many different ways to meditate, right? So it's that evolution of learning and practice. So as I said, Emma is big on this daily practice, and that's what we're going to take a look at today, is 3 of the practices that she used in her 12 lessons. The first one is a daily statement of good. A daily statement of good. Now, Emma interchanges the word good and God. Good is God, God is good. She interchanges those. The first class I ever taught about Emma, the students were just a little overwhelmed by all of her statements of the good, the good, the good, the God, the God, the God. So there was a big mixture of all of that in her teaching. But just know that as we go through today, that the good and the God are the same thing in her discussion. The statement of good that she suggests that we use is, there is good for me, and I ought to have it. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. Now, to me, that sounds a little sassy. Does that sound a little sassy? It does, doesn't it? But I think Emma might have been sassy. Now, I've not read that about her, but I think she might have been. She was born in 1849 and passed in 1925. She was well-educated female. She took on Mary Baker Eddy a little bit in the Christian Science movement. She was an editor of a newspaper. She founded her own school and taught many, many people. She ordained women in the ministry. I think she might have been a little sassy. I think she might have been. Now, if you're familiar with Ernest Holmes, you may recall that he had a radio show in 1949 that was called This Thing Called Life. This Thing Called Life. And it went on until the 1950s, at which time he realized it was taking too much of his time, so he asked if Bill Hornaday would take it over. He was the minister of Founders Church in Los Angeles. Bill took it over, ran it until 1990 something, until Arthur Chang, who's now at the Founders Church in Los Angeles, took it over. Did you know you can still listen to that program today? That you can go back and you can listen to recordings of Ernest, and you can hear Bill Hornaday, and you can hear Arthur Chang, who's now continuing that. They've taken it off the radio, and it's now being streamed, and it's recorded on the Founders website, so you can go there and listen to Ernest Holmes. But I wanted to share a snippet of Ernest with you today. Okay?
There is the power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Every Sunday, we invite you to join us in listening to a series of inspirational programs featuring Dr. Ernest Holmes, noted author and spiritual leader in This Thing Called Life. And now it is my pleasure to present Dr. Ernest Holmes.
Thank you, Bill. Friends, did you know that you and I have a close relationship with this thing called life and the law of good that governs everything? This relationship is so intimate that to get close to you as your thought, it really is in your own mind and in your own spirit. You are in this experiment with the greatest truth that can ever come to the mind of man. The realization that you are in partnership with the infinite, what the world has been looking for, you already possess, and does everyone else. For the power of good is available to you right now. In our talk today on perseverance, we're going to start just how it.
How many of you is that the first time that you've heard Ernest Holmes' voice? That's Ernest. And this is a picture of Founders Church. If you've not been there, I recommend, if you're ever in the Los Angeles area in the downtown, go take a tour of it. It's a fabulous, fabulous facility. It's beautiful. But anyway, there is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. He changed it up a little bit, didn't he? He changed up that sassy statement just a bit. But what do you suppose it means? Ernest and Emma both saying a similar type of thing. There's good for me and I ought to have it. There's a power for good and you can use it. In the science of mind, we know that there are laws that govern everything, physical and spiritual, and that it works through us, right? The law works through us. Because of this, we've been given free will and free choice. And we get to choose the direction that we want that law to go. We get to choose the experiences that we want to have. It's like we are programming our own GPS of our life, right? We're programming that. And that's where this mystical Emma comes in with her daily statement of good, is that programming of our life for the day. Programming our life for the day. There is good for me and I ought to have it. The other part of that statement that she reminds us about is the good that I'm seeking is seeking me. Because our ideas come from spirit. And that idea is seeking a manifestation of itself, right? So there's that alignment, unless we are resisting in some way the manifestation of that idea appearing in our lives. Out of fear, out of unworthiness, any of those beliefs that we might still harbor at some very deep level, we can block that manifestation, that alignment that we're already set up to receive. She suggests that we name or state that desire and repeat it to ourselves throughout the day. Sounds quite simple, doesn't it? Is anybody in this room that disciplined? Right? It sounds easy, but most of us are not quite that disciplined to be able to do that repetition every single day. Some examples that she uses for naming are good. There is good for me, and it is health. How does that sound? There is good for me, and it is health. There is good for me, and it is wealth. It is enough money to spend, share, and save. There is good for me, and it is a loving relationship. If that's too much to take on in the beginning, maybe go with something more simple. There is good for me, and it is a pleasant and productive day. I like that one because that really opens it up to adventure and excitement and fun, as long as it's productive and pleasant, right? That's the criteria. Or maybe it's an intention statement that is peaceful and joy-filled. I don't care how it shows up as long as it's peaceful and joy-filled. These are ways that we can have our statement of good for the day that we start out with every day. I've heard stories of Ernest Holmes that when he was wanting to create additional abundance in his life, that he would treat for the exact amount that he was looking for. If it was $300 or whatever, that's what he would treat for. And people would say, well, Ernest, you're so good at that. Why don't you treat more than what you need? And he says, why would I do that? I know it's going to be there tomorrow. I just treat for what I need today. And I know what I need tomorrow will appear as well. I can treat again. I can treat again. And it was his faith and his consciousness of knowing his source, and that he was always abundantly sourced, that he didn't have to hoard or treat for more than he needed. It was only his daily ration, so to speak, much like the Israelites in the story in the Bible where they received manna from heaven, but they were told they couldn't save it. They couldn't store it. They would get their day's supply, because if they saved or stored it, it would go bad and would not be any good the next day. And every morning they got up and there was more manna from heaven falling to sustain them. Again, that infinite source and supply ever supplying us. So let's move on to another of her practices. This one she calls the denials. She calls this the denials. And she says that we deny anything not God. We deny anything not God. Any misunderstandings, false beliefs, and problems we may now experience. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says that denials are for the purpose of vitalizing faith. A little different spin. A little different spin. Vitalizing faith. Let's look at some of Emma's denials and see if they feel vitalizing to us and to our faith this morning. The first one is there is no evil. There is no evil. You may have heard that in Science of Mind also. That's one of the beliefs that we have as well. After the events of this weekend, that's a hard one to take, isn't it? That's a hard one to take when we see the choices that some of our fellow human beings, our brothers and sisters on this planet, have made. But we recognize that while the world may condemn those choices, may condemn those actions, they're still children of the Most High. They're still in the oneness, in this one consciousness with us. They are still of the loving God. They just made choices that most of the world doesn't agree with. And I would believe that we're going to see some groups that get inflamed by this in one direction and some that get inflamed in another direction. And the consciousness continues to be polarized. But our work is to be love, is it not? Our work is to lift that into that spiritual realm and to have that coming together in the loving consciousness of the highest God, the one God. I've seen a lot of stuff on the Facebook in the last couple of days from our local Arizona Interfaith Organization, where our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters are coming together in that interfaith network to support each other in love, in peace, in compassion. And that's our work, I believe, is to bring ourselves into alignment in that higher consciousness, in that place of love, in that place of oneness. Because there will be a tipping point where there is more of the connection than there is the resistance. So we have the opportunity to contribute our consciousness to that uplift in the vibration of our planet. Her second denial is there is no matter. There is no matter. Now, Ernest Holmes says in The Science of Mind, we do not, Living the Science of Mind, sorry, we do not deny that man experiences discord or disease. What we affirm is that the experience is a belief in form, and the disintegration of the belief will produce corresponding disintegration of the form. What do you think? Keeping the Science of Mind is we affirm what it is we seek to experience, right? Rather than denying and adding energy to what the experience is. Because we have a tendency to hold things in our experience through our energy, whether it's an energy of resistance, which is just as powerful as an energy of holding it in and calling it in. It's still that energetic pull, isn't it? It's the energy of that. So he is telling us that any experience that we have is our belief in form manifested for us, and that we can change the belief and change the form. Change the belief and change the form. Denials are for the purpose of vitalizing faith. Does the denial of matter vitalize your faith? That's a question for you to ask yourself today. What is your belief about matter, about hard things? Hard things. The next one is there is no absence of life, substance, or intelligence. There is no absence of life, substance, or intelligence. Now, I don't know about you, but my mind immediately goes to the affirmative and goes, yes, because there is only life, substance, and intelligence. I found that really interesting, the way my mind jumped over to that affirmation of that rather than the denial of it, which again is in alignment with more of the Science of Mind teaching. The next one is there's nothing to hate. There's nothing to hate. And this, of course, goes back to the first one in the idea of evil. Because hate is more destructive to us than it is to that which we hate, isn't it? Just like unforgiveness is more destructive to ourselves than it is to the person or place or thing that we are unforgiving of. It pollutes our own environment, our own self. And love is the only healing power on our planet. The next is there is no sin, sickness, or death. Sin we know is a mistake, right? It's a mistake, missing the mark. Sickness and death happen in our world. We experience that in our lives. Science of Mind does not deny those things that happen in our physical realm. But we do deny it as a spiritual experience. Because our spirit lives on forever, doesn't it? It is immortal. At some point in time, we will cast off these shells, these suits, these human forms, but our consciousness will continue on to another expression of some sort, to be clothed in something. We don't know what. But these suits don't serve us forever, do they? Our sixth and seventh ones are of our own design, denying whatever misunderstanding that you may have. Some misunderstanding in your life that you may have around finance or career or relationship or yourself, and denying that. That's the other 2 points that she makes. Understanding that denial is a way of negating our belief in the unreal, and denying until we can affirm and believe the truth. And that's really the way that Ernest, I think, teaches it. You know, denials work as far as they go. That's sort of his way of saying it in the science of mind. But sometimes we need to deny when the effects are poking us in the face, right? The fact we're in pain, we're hurting, things are not going our way, life is complete chaos. Those are the effects, right? And we need to deny those sometimes, that those are not the truth of who we are. And deny that until we can get ourselves into that place of going, okay, I can see and believe the truth now. And I can affirm the truth in my healing. I can affirm the truth in the clarity of my life. I can affirm the truth in the love in my life. I can affirm the truth in my success and abundance and prosperity. Sometimes we have to take those steps to convince ourselves in our humanness of the truth of our very being. So what do you think? Can you take some glimmers out of these denials that she has? Denying anything that's not God? Can you find some glimmers of truth in that? It's always fun to try new experiences, new spiritual practices, isn't it? And that's how we grow. We learn meditation of being in stillness and the silence. Then we find out there's a walking meditation, or a running meditation, or a mindfulness practice, or chanting, or something else. And we expand. So, maybe these might serve in that expansion for you and seeing things in just a little different way. The last one is affirmation. Are you ready for this? She says we affirm all as God. Didn't we just deny that anything not God? And now we're affirming that all is God. Welcome to mystical Emma. She calls these her 5 universal affirmations and says we should read them daily. Let's go through them. My good is my God. My God is life, truth, love, substance, intelligence, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. A mouthful of big words. The second, in God I live, move, and have my being. One of my personal favorites. I'm reminded of the example we used a few weeks ago where the infant is in the mother's womb, and in that womb it lives, moves, and has its being. And we are much like that in the womb of the divine. We live, move, and have our being in God, not knowing anything else outside of that. And it lives, moves, and has its being through us. The third, I am spirit, mind, wisdom, strength, and wholeness. I think this is where Ernest got the idea of his God qualities. I think he's got 7 or 11 of those that he uses in the science of mind. Beauty, truth, wisdom. I think these are Emma's. The fourth, the I am works inevitably through me to will and do that which ought to be done by me. I love that. I love that. The I am works inevitably through me to will and do that which ought to be done by me. I am supported. I am supported. And the last is, I am governed by the law of God and cannot sin or fear sin, sickness, or death. That one I could stop at, I am governed by the law of God. Stop right there for me. But you can make these your own, right? You can make these your own. And again, she says add a couple of your own affirmative statements that resonate with you into that list. So I think we can see from all of this the denials and affirmations, they go together. We deny what is false, we affirm what is true. And I think that's her point. Deny what's false, affirm what's true. It all gets us to the same place. It all gets us to the same place. Affirming that higher and greater truth. We don't deny what's happening in our life, though, and I think science of mind and a lot of New Thought gets a bad rap for that. Pollyanna, they won't look at what's real, they just ignore everything, spiritual bypass are some of the words that we hear. And I don't think that's what our teaching really is. I think it can get misinterpreted to that. We look at reality, we look at what's right there, but we also know it's an effect. We know it's an effect. And as Ernest says, it's an experience of the belief in form, and the disintegration of the belief will produce a corresponding disintegration of the form. It'll change your thinking, change your life again, isn't it? And I think that's a powerful statement of the science of mind. And it gives good perspective of the creative process in our life that's always active in our life. It's the idea of belief and form becomes the form, change the belief and change the form. It's our cycle of planting the seed, growing the plant dies, and boom, we go back into seed. Very much the same. So let's look at practicing the presence for this week and see how we might be able to take some Emma practice home with us. The first is, there is good for me and I ought to have it. Like stomping your foot. There's good for me and I ought to have it, yes. And the daily practice of our statement of good. Imagine getting up every morning and having that statement with your coffee. There's good for me. And my good is health. My good is joy. My good is right relationship. My good is filling your own blank. Filling your own blank. She adds some simple affirmations along with those. I just want to read those to you. Close your eyes to be comfortable. The good I am seeking is my God. My God is my life. The good I am seeking is my health. God is my health. The good I am seeking is my strength. God is my strength. The good I am seeking is my support. God is my support. The good I am seeking is my defense. God is my defense. Life is God. Truth is God. Love is God. Substance is God. It's all God and it's all good. So it is. Her second was the denials. Changing our perspective of our world of effects. That's really what a denial does for us, doesn't it? It changes our perspective. But I think Emma's idea of these denials practice is a little mystical because it's counterintuitive, isn't it? It's a little counterintuitive. Denial means that we refuse to admit the truth of or existence of something. But I think that's really what she's saying. Deny anything not God. Deny our own false beliefs. You ever catch yourself saying something and going, that's not true. That's not true. We'll say one of those negative affirmations about ourselves. One that I use in class a lot with people is like when I start to draw on the board, I say, oh, I'm not creative. That's not true, right? That's a negative affirmation. So I catch myself in that and tell myself that's not true. I create in many other ways, not artistically necessarily. At the spiritual level of our beingness, we deny that existence of evil and sickness and death itself. Intellectually, we know these things happen in our lives, though. We experience them. We feel the pain of them. We feel the pain of the loss. We know that they happen in this time-space reality of this life. But we know at that higher level that we're all still one in the consciousness, and that these are just effects that we are experiencing. I think true transformation of consciousness, transformation on this planet, requires that we play in this higher realm of consciousness and spirit. It's the only way it's going to change. We can't change it at the world of effects. We've got to change it at cause. We've got to change it at cause. The third is her 5 affirmations. I call them spiritual affirmations. They're affirming the reality of God as us in form. God as us in form. They're about coming into alignment or divine harmony with spirit, with good, the good in the universe that's already there for us, simply awaiting our acceptance of it. Simply waiting our acceptance of it. Her affirmations return us to believing in our divine nature, that we are children of God, that we are in alignment with that goodness, with our own wholeness. So I would invite you to add your own affirmations around your highest idea of spirit as you. What is your highest idea of spirit as you? Spiritual discipline, spiritual practice. That's kind of what she's talking about. Spiritual discipline and spiritual practice. So this week I invite you to try these 3 practices. See if you like them. You might find one of them really resonates with you and is very powerful. Statement of being every morning with your coffee. We hear that taught today, more of setting your intention for the day. We see it in business. We see it. Wayne Dyer had the power of intentions. These come from Emma and other spiritual teachers. A simple practice that you can just add to your coffee every morning, or your tea in the morning. So let's close this week of Emma with one of her quotes. She says, "I do believe that my God is now working with me and through me and by me to make me omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. I have faith in God. I have the faith of God. I have the faith of God." Won't you join me as we go within for an affirmative prayer this morning? As we move into the stillness of this moment and feel that breath within our body, we recognize that that is the breath of God, that it surrounds us, that it is in, through, and as each of us as this thing we call life. We recognize that Spirit is the infinite harmony of the universe, that it is order, it is love, it is peace, it is wisdom and intelligence. It is the known and the unknown. And all of it is here now, present in this room, pressing against each one of us with each breath that we take, each beat of our hearts. Life itself. And I know that as each of us is in alignment with this thing called life and in alignment with harmony, that we are that which it is. We are that harmony and love and peace, the order, the clarity of Spirit. Here and now. We are that which it is. We live, move, and have our being in it. It lives, moves, and has its being in us as an expression and form. So from that knowing, I speak my word this morning. For and about each one of us gathered in this room, knowing that we are the change the world seeks. That through our conscious awareness, through our realization of the truth of this thing we call oneness, of God, of love, that we can vibrate at a higher level of love and impact our planet, the peace on our planet, the wholeness of all on it, the healing that it so desperately calls for. We call it forth through and as ourselves this day. We are a channel through which Spirit flows. We are the peace of God. We are the instruments of the divine. I speak a word on New Zealand and all communities across our planet who are reeling from the events of the weekend, knowing healing, knowing peace, knowing the light of Spirit in, through, and as each, as they move through this time of mourning, this time of fear, this time of confusion. We know God. In, through, and as all. God's in this too. I know for anyone in this room that has anything on their heart this day that they seek prayer around, as they lift that into their awareness, that we know that it is done unto them as they believe, and we know healing in this moment for whatever it is that is on their heart. We know clarity, we know abundance, we know flow, we know love, harmony, wisdom. Whatever the need, we know that it is filled in this moment. And how grateful I am for that knowing. Grateful for the manifestation of this prayer. Grateful for the truth that love is all there is. As I release this into the action of law, knowing that it's already done, it's already so, it's already made manifest in the mind of God, and we simply affirm it now by saying, and so it is.